So today I have this area here outside of the front yard. So I didn't do this last year because we had to do all of our landscaping work, and I want this to be the same grass that's out in the front yard so it looks like a pathway right up to the porch. It's all connected and that's all the same grass. So I would have preferred to have done this in the fall, which is the best time to seed cool season grasses, but there was still some work going on with the porch. I just don't really have a choice now. I have this thing sitting here and I want to get it seeded before it gets too late into the season and it ends up just being a whole bunch of weeds. So the first thing that you want to do is make sure that you just have a good topsoil there. So I live in Iowa here where we have plenty of good topsoil and we are blessed with that. But if you do not have something like that, I would definitely try to source out a good soil to put on top of here. It's just going to help the grass grow a lot better and grow into it very nicely. So I have some of this soil worked up. Now I just need to spread it out evenly as much as possible before we'll get to the next steps, which is a quick and easy process today. Any of these weeds that you see in here, any of this yellow stuff has already been sprayed and is already dead. When I worked up this soil a little bit, that was some of the material that's left, but this is already dead stuff. So a lot of times people ask, what should the level be when you put soil up to the concrete? Now remember, especially you can see how this soil is so fine, it's going to settle. So, you know, right at the concrete level is going to be totally fine. So I have this area prepped out here right now. You can really spend as much time on this as you want to in terms of leveling. Now remember that you have one chance right now when you don't have anything in place to get it as good as possible. So you can spend as much time on it as you need, but I have it pretty good and smooth now and I'm happy with where it's at. So now we're going to put down the grass seed. I have my Elite Perennial Ryegrass here. This is the same thing that's in the front yard. So if you want to see what it looked like last year, I'll put a picture in here or some footage of what it was looking like and what you can expect out of that. So I want to make sure all this matches. I'm just going to seed this by hand. You can certainly do it with a small spreader if you'd like to, but because I'm working right up against my mulch, I don't want to get too much seed over into any of those areas. At least specifically on the edges, I'm just going to seed this by hand. The rate for bare soil would be about 7 pounds of this per 1,000 square feet. I didn't measure off this exact area, but I just want to put down the seed evenly and I want to make sure there's no piles of it anywhere, but you don't necessarily have to measure it all out just for a small area. So you're just going to lightly put this out by hand, just kind of gradually getting it out there. You don't want to put down too much in one spot because it's very, very difficult to take it away. So certainly just start slow and just get this put out here as evenly as you can. Alright, so I have the majority of the seed down now, but what I like to do is just take one of these wire rakes, just very, very lightly drag it on here, just basically to put a little bit of that seed underneath just the smallest amount of soil. You don't want it buried, but you do want it to be slightly covered so there's very good seed to soil contact. Now after I do that rake in, I like to do just one more broadcast and I'm just going to keep it very close to the ground and go mostly in the middle here. I have the edges nice and seeded, but after you do that raking, just to make sure that there's good even coverage through the rest of it, I like to do one more just little pass through here. Next step is I'm going to be using this starter fertilizer that has an ingredient in it that will help to prevent some weeds. So as these weeds come up here in the spring, especially, like I said, for cool season grass, it's not the greatest time to be doing this, but this has an ingredient in there that helps to kill off those weeds as they start to emerge. You can also get that same ingredient in a spray, so if you do have a backpack sprayer you want to spray out onto here, you could spray down the soil right now, right over top of the seed. It won't hurt the seed whatsoever, but it will help to kill off those weeds as they do start to come up. Then you still have to be prepared in the early summer here as some weeds might come in. You might have to do a post-emergent spray, which is just spraying over top of the existing grass and weeds here and using the right product that will select those weeds, leave the grass. Won't hurt any of the grass, but it will take care of those weeds. But you don't want to do that before you get at least 3 or 4 mows in on this new grass once it grows in. So no other weed control on it right now. Just worry about the grass and getting it as healthy as possible before worrying about any of the weeds. This next step is optional, but if you do happen to have access to a roller or even in a small spot, if you're doing something where you can just kind of come out and walk on this a little bit, get it to press down that seed very lightly into the soil, that's going to help again to get the best seed to soil contact and make sure that it grows in very, very well. But I do happen to have a roller. I don't even have it filled with any water. It doesn't need any weight in it. There's enough weight here to just roll on there and just lightly push that into the soil. So now you've come to the point where you could simply start watering this, and you should have fine luck with that. But I've found that covering it with something really helps to prevent anything from coming to eat it, like birds, or also just to keep it from drying out. Whenever something's exposed like this, it's obviously going to dry out much faster than if you have a material there to cover it. Now in the past I've used a top dressing, and that's simply just putting something over top of it, like a light material like a compost or a peat moss or something similar. But what I found is that storms tend to just wash that stuff away very easily, and then your work is kind of all for naught. Past couple years or so, I've done tons of renovations with straw blankets, and I've found that they work very, very well. And once things are growing, you can actually remove them fairly easily, get them out of the way so they're not going to be any problem for mowing in the future. So I have a few of those left over that I'm going to try to reuse today, but if you happen to want something like that, I'll see if there's a link that I can leave in the description for anything online. Otherwise, you should be able to find these locally too, or in some of the big box stores that you can get to roll that out onto here, staple it down, and then you'll start your watering, and it will help all of that to grow in very nice and evenly. Now it is down to just keeping this from drying out as much as possible. Again, that's why covering it is going to help you out a lot, even if you only get water on it a couple times a day. If you have straw on here, it's definitely going to help to hold that moisture in place. If it's just sitting out in the sun, out in the wind and everything, it's going to be difficult to keep it from drying out unless you're able to just consistently water. Now you're just going to keep it as much as possible from drying out until it germinates. For ryegrass, it's going to be fairly fast, although it is spring right now and it's still fairly cold, so it's going to take just slightly longer than it would in the fall. Once it starts to grow and you're going to have to mow it, then that's about when I would take these blankets back off of there and just let it be at that point. You're still going to have to keep up some of your irrigation and make sure that here, while it's young, it doesn't get too much stress and all that stuff, but this is going to be a great start to it. It's not a very difficult process. You just need a few tools, you need a few different items, and you can get that done fairly easily. If you have a few areas that you need to fix, or maybe there's just a couple things that you needed to add seed to, you were looking for a process to do it quick and easy, that's it today. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time.